Good morning, Grinnell. I am overjoyed and over the moon to be here celebrating with you as an honorary member of the class of 2025 on this glorious day. You may notice the shoes. Scarlett, in your honor. Thank you to President Harris, to the Board of Trustees, and to everyone who made this day possible. Congratulations to every parent, grandparent, step-parent, foster parent, godparent, aunt, uncle, sibling, and loved one, every member of the faculty and staff, and to my fellow honorands gathered here to cheer on the graduates this morning, the Grinnell Class of 2025. Give yourselves a hand. Thank you for inviting me back to this beloved campus. I was last here to speak in January of 2014, during a blizzard that was so sudden and so massive that the authorities had to shut down Interstate 80 and the college had to make emergency accommodations for me. In the Midwest, where snow is just another feature of the landscape, that's saying something. It gave me more time on campus. Today we can see that the prairie is still being the prairie, but I thank you for bringing me back when we can actually see the grass. Back in 2014, it's hard to believe, but the members of today's graduating class, all of you, were in middle school. How different the world has become since then. You applied to Grinnell in the before times, in the depths of the pandemic, and became among the honored few to get into this historic school in the first place, and to be able to call yourselves Grinnellians. You arrived on this campus in the midst of masking and social distancing and the threat of new COVID variants. You've bravely faced uncertainties in every corner, yet you set about your work despite the disruptions and the divisions of our era. I am in awe of this graduating class and of the entire generation that is now entering the world. If anyone is ready for the challenges of our time, it is you, the class of 2025. You have come into your own on hallowed ground. You've been studying in a place that since its founding has been at the forefront of social justice. Not only did Grinnell take its name from a 19th century abolitionist, but we are standing at the actual station of the Underground Railroad where people escaping enslavement sought refuge. Even the bell that rang before the processional just minutes ago has rung every year since the 19th century. The power of history is all around us if we are wise enough to learn from it, to learn from humanity's instruction manual. The challenges we face as a species and that you are inheriting as the next generation can seem overwhelming. They can seem insurmountable. Climate change, the resurgence of hate and intolerance, war and famine on the other side of the planet, and whatever pandemics may be waiting in the wings. The overturning of basic rights over one's bodily autonomy and whether or when to bear children. The list is so long that it's not uncommon to hear people say that they feel helpless. What can one person do? We as individuals cannot fix everything that is wrong on our planet, but we have more power than we know. We have the power and, in fact, a duty to educate ourselves about the true and full history of this old house that we've inherited, the United States of America and the world in general, the planet, to educate those around us and the next generation to be fairer and more just than the ones before. We have the power to act with honor and to stand up when we see wrongdoing and injustice anywhere in the world, both here and abroad. To stand up and to advocate on behalf of people who are oppressed and under attack, to extend help and benefit of the doubt to those marginalized and in need, those who have historically been denied, as did the founders of this college. We have the power to harness our own strengths, to choose one thing and to do it to the best of our ability, to focus on what we uniquely know, focus on our area of expertise, whether healthcare, climate change, legal justice, whatever it may be, and use that God-given talent for the benefit of the world. Perhaps most readily, we have the power to do everything we can in our immediate spheres of influence, in the circle of people that we have access to, in the institutions and the organizations that we become a part of. One person has the power to influence everyone around them. And if each person harnessed that power to the greater good, we would have a different world. On a campus that was part of the Underground Railroad, we can find inspiration for what I call the Overground Railroad, which unfolded over much of the 20th century, and it was called the Great Migration. It was a phenomenon in which 6 million Black Southerners defected the Jim Crow South. They were defecting a world where it was actually, believe it or not, against the law for a Black person and a white person to merely play checkers together in Birmingham. You could go to jail if you were caught playing checkers with a person of a different race. They were defecting a world where in courtrooms throughout the South, there was actually a Black Bible and an altogether separate white Bible to swear to tell the truth on in court. The very word of God was segregated in the Jim Crow South. The same sacred object could not be touched by hands of different races. This is the world that they were fleeing. The people of the Great Migration sought political asylum within the borders of their own country. They were proxies for someone in all of our families who had to have done what they did just for us to be on this soil at this moment, whether they crossed the Atlantic, the Pacific, or the Rio Grande. The difference is that no other group of Americans had to act like immigrants in order to be recognized as citizens. Think about those rice plantations and those tobacco fields and those sugar plantations and cotton plantations that were not so long ago. We're talking about in the middle of the 20th century. On those rice plantations and tobacco fields and sugar plantations and cotton fields were actually opera singers, jazz musicians, novelists, playwrights, engineers, defense attorneys, accountants, professors. And how do we know that? We know that because that is what many of them and their children and now grandchildren and even great-grandchildren have often chosen to become once they had the chance to choose for themselves what they would do with their God-given talents. This great migration, the actions of individual people combined into a larger mass group, produced people whose names we might not even have known had they or their parents not had the courage to act. Toni Morrison, Diana Ross, Michelle Obama, John Coltrane, Prince, Tupac, and in fact, much of the music that we listen to, from jazz to Motown to hip hop, might not have existed had there been no Great Migration. From this, we learn the power of the individual decision, the power of a leaderless revolution. We do not have to wait for a leader to tell us what needs to be done. Here were people who had absolutely nothing, but by their actions, one person added to another person, added to another person, multiplied by millions, managed to do what a president of the United States, Abraham Lincoln, was unable to do. They managed to do what the Emancipation Proclamation could not do. These people, by their actions, were able to do what the powers that be, North and South, could not or would not do. They freed themselves. And in doing so, they helped free the country of a formal Jim Crow system and put so much pressure on the country that it was forced to take notice. And combined with the heroic efforts and protests of those who stayed in the South, paved the way for civil rights and for the rights of immigrants, for the rights of women, for the rights of the disabled and other marginalized groups. Yet the thing is that they didn't think that what they were doing was making history while they were making it. They saw what they were doing as merely the best among the limited options of their time. They couldn't have seen the magnitude of their private decisions and had no grand title for it. Because they were right in the middle of it, they could not have seen how one person added to another person, multiplied by millions, could be a liberation movement all its own. They are proof that we each have more power than we may have allowed ourselves to believe. We each have the power to make history. You have the power to make history. If enough people of principle and purpose do the same thing at the same time, they can change a region, they can change a country, they can change the world. You've been through so much the last few years, as has the nation. We are not the same as we were 4 years ago when you arrived on this campus. Hopefully we are stronger and wiser. But if we have learned anything from COVID, which loomed over much of your time on this campus, it's that an invisible organism without a brain managed to overtake a presumably smarter species because it does not care about color. It does not care about nationality or immigrant status or gender or national borders or passports. COVID saw all humans for what we actually are, one interconnected and interdependent species. COVID saw all humans as fundamentally the same. It would infect anyone that it had access to long enough. It sees what we have in common if humans don't see it for themselves, that we are all in this together and that it is time that we started to act like it. So I ask that you imagine a world free of strife and division, a world of peace and belonging for all of humanity. Remember that every song ever written, every skyscraper ever built, every feat of engineering, every invention we now take for granted exists because someone imagined what to that moment had never existed. History is not the long ago actions of bold-faced names from centuries past. History is whatever each of us did before the moment that we are in. History is what each of you is destined to make. The problems that we face are structural and systemic, but while we work toward those larger goals, let us find inspiration in the quiet power and bravery of the ancestors of virtually every person in this space. The ancestors who left their homelands to come to this country, whether from Ireland or Poland or China or Mississippi. As you leave this campus to start your lives, I'd like you to think about a moment that had to have happened in nearly all of our backgrounds because we are here as proof of it. This is the moment when someone in your lineage, at about your age, made the difficult decision to leave all that they had known and all that they had loved to migrate far, far away in hopes that life might be better. Most of us are descendants of migration one way or the other. It's just a matter of how far back in our lineage we have to go. Migration is what people do on the cusp of life. So there is this young person at a dock about to board a ship that will carry them across the Atlantic or the Pacific Ocean. Or there is a young person loading up a truck that will cross the Rio Grande. Or there is a young person about to board a bus or a train that will carry them out of the Jim Crow South. And there with them, at that ship, or at that truck, or at that train station, are the people who raised them, their mother, their father, their aunt, their uncle, their grandparents, whoever it was who had gotten them to that point. Those older people were not going to be able to make the crossing with them. As the young person in all of our backgrounds looked into the eyes of the people who had raised them, there was no guarantee that they would ever see them alive again. Remember, there was no FaceTime, no cell phones, not even predictable long-distance telephone service, and even if there had been, many of the people they were leaving did not have telephones. This was going to be a complete break from all that they had known and all that they had loved. And the next time that they might hear anything about the people who had raised them might be a telegram saying that your father has passed away, or that your mother is very, very ill and you must return home quickly if you are to see her alive again. That is the nature of the sacrifice that had to have occurred in all of our families just to be here. And I'm convinced that they did not make that sacrifice to see their descendants at war with one another. I am convinced that that is not why they did what they did. So I want to leave you with the words of Richard Wright. Thank you. I want to leave you with the words of Richard Wright, the novelist, the poet laureate of the Great Migration, who journeyed from Mississippi to Chicago in 1927 at the migration age of 19, facing uncertainties as are you at that milestone in his life. He wrote these words as a whisper to anyone at a turning point, as a prayer to each of us on our journey, that if the ancestors could do what they did with so much less than we have been given, then there is nothing that we can't do in our day. And he wrote, I was leaving the South to fling myself into the unknown. I was taking a part of the South to transplant in alien soil, to see if it could grow differently, if it could drink of new and cool rains, bend in strange winds, respond to the warmth of other suns, and perhaps, just perhaps, to bloom. May you bloom in both darkness and in light, and may God bless you, the class of 2025, as you go forth to a world that awaits you. Congratulations to you all.